Good morning, all, and welcome to the officials from the Public Transport Service Corporation, the Ministry of Works and Transport, and the Auditor General's Department. My name is Devendranath Tanku, and I'm the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee for today's session. Please note that the Public Accounts Committee has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, appropriation accounts of monies expended out of sums granted by Parliament to meet the public expenditure of Trinidad and Tobago. B, such other accounts as may be referred to the committee by the House of Representatives, or as are authorized or required to be considered by the committee under any other enactment. And C, the report of the Auditor General on any such accounts, whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. The purpose of today's meeting is for the Public Accounts Committee to examine the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Public Transport Service Corporation for the financial years 2014 to 2018, to assess whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it, to examine the challenges being faced and the possible solutions to these challenges, to assist the PTSC in achieving efficient delivery of services while ensuring that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval, to observe and assess the extent of the implementation of the recommendations made in the 8th report, 11th Parliament of the Public Accounts Committee on an examination of the report of the Auditor General on a special audit of the PTSC. Based on the issues identified, the following key stakeholders were invited to today's session: the Public Transport Service Corporation, the PTSC, the Ministry of Works and Transport, MOWT, and the Auditor General's Department, the AGD. Please note as well that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11, on Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners are invited to send their comments related to today's inquiry via email at parl101@ttparliament.org, via Facebook at /ttparliament, via Twitter at ttparliament. I will now ask and invite members of the Public Accounts Committee here with us today and with us online as well to introduce themselves. Members.
Jalen John, Vice Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee.
Good morning and welcome, Dr. Amory Brown, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs and member of this committee.
Good morning, Paula Gopi-Schoon, member. Thank you.
Good morning, Roger Monroe, member.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sharice Sipasad. I'm a member of the committee.
Thank you all very much, members. I would now invite the Auditor General to make a brief opening statement.
Good morning, all. Chairman, members, corporations team, special good morning to Ms. Yearwood, PS. Very briefly, I would just like to let the meeting know that we at the Auditor General's Department, we are making progress in bringing the PTSC's audits up to date. Granted, not as quickly as we might like, I'm sure, but we are still facing some challenges in terms of staffing and so on. However, we recently completed fieldwork for 2019, and we should begin fieldwork on 2020 very soon. And finally, I'd just like to point out that over the last 2 audits interactions with PTSC, I think it would be fair to say that the PTSC's team worked tirelessly, I would say, to provide documents and explanations that we required. In previous years, that proved to be a challenge, but they're really trying to help us out here. So in the end, I think we should expect a quicker turnaround time in terms of completing the audits and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I neglected to request that you introduce us to yourself and your good team. Can we do that now, please?
Okay, yes, Gary Peters, Assistant Auditor General, and with me are.
Good morning, all. My name is Desmond Noel, Audit Director.
Good morning. I am Rukmini Ramnarayan, Assistant Audit Director. Thank you.
Thank you all very much and welcome. I would like to get the Ministry of Works and Transport to also, if you may, ma'am, introduce your team.
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Sonia Francis Yearwood, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport.
Hi, good morning. Wayne Coilers, Acting Chief Flying Officer, Ministry of Works and Transport.
Can I also ask that members from the Public Transport Service Corporation also introduce your teams, please?
Good morning, Chairman. My name is Robin Rampersad. I'm the Vice Chairman of the corporation.
Good morning, Chairman, members. I am Mr. Patrick Gomez. I am the General Manager, PTSC.
Good morning. I'm Gloria Cornel Boyce, Deputy General Manager of Finance at PTSC.
Good morning, Denise Sabino, Corporate Secretary, PTSC.
Good morning, Lalita Bala Sethi, Deputy General Manager, Corporate Planning and Strategic Performance Management, PTSC.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Bhushan Singh, Director, PTSC.
Hello, good morning. I am David Mangal, Deputy General Manager of Engineering at PTSC.
Sorry. Thank you all very much. I would like to invite the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Works and Transport to make a brief opening statement, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and members of the Public Accounts Committee. The Ministry of Works and Transport wishes to thank the committee for its invitation to attend today's meeting to discuss the audited financial statements of the Public Transport Service Corporation for the period 2014 to 2018. The PTSC was established as a statutory body by the PTSC Act No. 2 of 1965, Chapter 4802, and responsibility for same was assigned to the Ministry of Works and Transport at various times throughout the subsequent years, the most recent being the Trinidad and Tobago Gazette, Volume 59, number 158, dated September 9, 2020. As the line ministry for PTSC, the Ministry of Works and Transport provides assistance to the PTSC in the implementation of their capital programs and the administration of the corporation's main mandated function, which is to provide a safe, adequate, economic, and efficient public transportation system adapted to the needs of the country. So once again, I thank you for the invitation, and we are willing to respond to any questions to the best of our ability posed by the committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Pierce. I want to now invite the Vice Chairman or the General Manager. Either of you can make a brief opening statement on behalf of the PTSC, please.
Good morning again, Chairman and members of the Public Accounts Committee. On behalf of the Board and Management of the Public Transport Service Corporation, I wish to thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide updates on the audited financial statements for the years 2014 to 2018, and to respond to questions detailed in your correspondence dated April 3rd, 2023. As Vice Chairman, I welcome this opportunity to be part of the team this morning. Our team is comprised of at least one board member, Dr. Singh, the General Manager, and senior management of the corporation. We have spent time addressing several recommendations made both by your committee as well as the Auditor General's office, and we are grateful for the keen insights provided into the operations of the PTSC. The corporation has been working diligently to streamline our fleet as well as other procedures according to international best practices, using standards such as APTA, the American Public Transport Association, and the UITP, International Association of Public Transport. We have strengthened several areas, such as our IT department and infrastructure, and our customer service in alignment with our approved 2021 to 2023 strategic plan. One area of good improvement has been in customer satisfaction. This, according to independent surveys conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2019 and again in 2022. The corporation's financial statements up to and including fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022, have already been submitted to the Auditor General's Department for its review. I thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, sir. What would, the normal process of the committee's hearing would be that I would start with some questions and then turn it over to my colleagues who will pick up other questions moving forward. I want to begin with a general question. What were some of the major problems affecting the PTSC's efficiency and effectiveness during the period 2014 to 2018?
Chairman, thank you for the question. Some of the major issues affecting the PTSC was the number of different fleet types in the corporation. That was a recommendation of the Auditor General. There were also issues with regard to the efficiency with respect to maintenance of the fleet. That was another issue identified. Efficiency of the staff. That was another issue identified.
Thank you. Can you advise what strategies have been put in place between 2018 then and now to address some of these issues that you have raised here, and whether those strategies have been measured in terms of their success?
In terms of the maintenance program of the PTSC, there have been significant improvements made in that regard. We have a very aggressive preventative maintenance program that is ongoing. We also have identified fleet types for disposal, and we are rationalizing the fleet in terms of those fleet types that are providing the best output for us. In terms of efficiency, we have undergone some restructuring internally to look at efficiencies within various departments, and that has been fairly successful at this point. All of these are ongoing at this stage. Strides. So in terms of our assessment we have made improvements along the way. We are assessing it against our strategic plan, and we have a number of activities that are still to be accomplished as we go forward.
Thank you, sir. The strat plan you're referring to is which one? The one up to 23 or?
2023, sir.
So that at 2022, you had 69%, and at 2023, your hope would have been to get into the 90% percentile?
Well, we would have set 2023, the strat plan, to look at achieving 90% customer service. Now, there are a number of activities and a number of initiatives that would have supported that. One could be one could look at the acquisition of new fleet types. That is actually ongoing at this point in time. So based on those other activities that we have taken on, yes, we are moving towards the 90%. And that is the goal that we are trying to achieve.
All right. So can you identify, no, you've identified some of the things that are works in progress, but can you specifically identify, I want to tie you down a little bit to the 90%. What would have caused you, given you had a strat plan, given that you were working towards that 90%, which is a reasonable, in fact, it's a nice option to have at 90%. But what would have caused you not to achieve the 90% that we are in 2023 now? Or is it that you hope that something will peak and by the end of the fiscal, you will get to 90%?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Vice Chair.
When we developed that strat plan 2021 to 2023, we looked at international benchmarks, best practice. And best practice is saying that if you, in the 80s, in the mid 80s, apparently, around there, you're doing a very good job in the transport service worldwide. I think in developing the strat plan, we were a bit ambitious by going 90%, because 90% customer service satisfaction is really high in this industry. As the GM indicated, in 2016, we were around 44%, which is under 50. We moved to 66 and then last year on to 69. As you would appreciate, when you make a great improvement like that, it is difficult to improve quicker again. And improvement would only occur in small increments. So we are nudging ourselves towards a higher percentile. But in realistic terms, and probably in reviewing our new strat plan, we may very well have to go with international best practice and reduce that optimism we had from 90 to probably 85 or somewhere around there.
All right, I think that's fair. I want to treat with something that would have been referred to in the opening statement. And just for my clarification, did you indicate that the financial statements for 2018, 19, 21, and 22 had already been submitted to the ministry?
Yes, Chairman, up to September 2022.
All right. Because my question is that one of the concerns that was raised in your communication to us is that the financial statements for 2018, 19, 21, and 22 were not ready in time because they were being prepared as at April 2023. I'm glad to hear that they were forwarded. But one of the concerns that we have as a Public Accounts Committee is the delay in which it takes for financial statements to be brought to the ministry and therefore from the ministry to Parliament and therefore from Parliament to the Public Accounts Committee. We are right now reviewing up to 2018. That's 5 years ago. So realistically, a lot would have changed between over the last 5 years. My question then is what would have caused, you indicated inadequate staffing. I want to get a little bit more specific to that because there's a requirement in law for the submission of these financials on a timely basis. So what in terms of inadequate staffing was specifically referenced when you indicated that this was the reason for the inability of PTSC to submit to your reports. I see my friend at the Auditor General's Department is looking to take this away from you, and I'm grateful for the advice.
That was my comment. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. Okay, great. So can you advise then what would have caused, well, you would have indicated inadequate staffing.
Yeah.
But you would have done that based on an assessment of some sort that the PTSC itself was suffering from inadequate staffing, or was it at the Auditor General's Department?
No, at the Auditor General's Department.
Can you advise then, sir, if that staffing has been resolved, if that issue has been resolved?
To some extent, we got some audit seniors who joined us recently. However, the lower level staff, there are a lot of vacancies at that level that would assist or feed into the work that would assist the audit seniors to complete their work. So we are trying to get PTSC up to date as soon as we could. But again, it would take some time because we have other audits as well that have equally deadlines as well.
All right, so what you just raised is a hornet's nest, because one of the major concerns of the Public Accounts Committee is the length of time. We have a huge list of public entities that have not, in fact, to date, been submitting their reports up to date to the Parliament and therefore to the Public Accounts Committee. And that's an accounting issue, but it's also an accountability issue. Can you advise, so if you allow me to be devil a little bit, to raise some of these issues, can you advise the extent of the understaffing, if I may use that phrase, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, to the extent of the understaffing, and what urgent measures are being put in place now to ensure that these reports are completed quickly and on a timely basis and in accordance with law?
Well, it's kind of difficult to answer that with any degree of certainty.
Let me help you, because I went on to quite a bit to make the point. But in terms of the staffing, what do you have outstanding? What vacancies do you have in the establishment, and what more staffing do you think is required? And just in terms of a number.
Yeah, in terms of the audit staff, the establishment has about 200 audit staff. We have just under 100 auditors on staff spread over the Public Accounts Division, the Division 2 that I am heading right now, that does the financial audits of statutory boards and similar bodies, as well as the performance audit division.
What you have, basically, what you just described is a 50% complement of the staff that you are paying.
Yes.
So can you advise what measures have been taken as far as you, from your perspective, to expedite the employment and the securing of that support staff?
That question will have to be answered by the Auditor General. Sorry about that. I'm unable to answer that question right now.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. I want to open the floor now to my colleagues who would ask some of the other questions, and then I will come back with some further questions. Colleagues? Member John, if you would start off.
Thank you, Chairman. The CEO, please. Oh, sorry. Thank you. What is the run out numbers on a daily basis for the corporation at this time? Because I'm seeing a 500 number buses, but that is aspirational. I'm seeing 500 buses. That's an aspirational figure because you're projecting in your strategic plan in both periods that we have here, 2018 to 2020 and 2021 to 2022. You're predicating your service on a run out of 500 buses. What is it now, please?
And that is correct, member. The end result is 500 buses. That is the target. And that would have envisaged acquisition. Right now, the bus run out that we have hovers around 160 to 170.
Okay, so that's about what, 40-something% of your, is it?
Well, the fleet right now, we have 187 buses that have been identified for disposal and have been approved by the board for disposal. We have a number of buses in long-term repair and short-term repair. So on a daily basis, we have an operational fleet that varies between that 160, 170.
So it means in terms of your 160 routes, I think I saw somewhere, I could be wrong. You could barely service that. You're not servicing that at all.
Member, I'll just take this one. At present, we service 79 routes because with the number of buses we have available, that's the maximum number of routes we can service effectively. The strat plan envisaged that we would be having a fleet, an available fleet of 500. Again, international best practice calls for 85% of the available fleet being on the road. So it would have brought it down to about 400 plus buses running on a daily basis. If we had that, we would then be able to service all 163 routes.
Yes.
The issue with us not doing it right now is that we had attempted to acquire 300 new buses, but for various reasons, that whole exercise was postponed and it's now in progress, supposed to take place sometime soon.
So purchase all 300 buses in one tranche?
No, 300 that will add to our fleet, and they will be in 3 phases, I think.
Okay. Okay, but I want to deal with what you have on your plate because I know a little bit about PTSC. And so I know that is woulda, shoulda, coulda with ministers. And I'm not saying it to your specific minister. All right, so let us deal with what you have and the demand you have for the service, etc. You know, the aspiration. You ain't getting 300 buses, unfortunately. You know, and I'm not saying that because I'm against PTSC. I love PTSC. All right. In terms of the buses that you have now, there's a mixed fleet. Am I correct?
You're correct, member.
How many different types of buses you have in that fleet?
At this point, I will hand that over to engineering. We'll be more specific on that.
Good morning. We have various types of buses, models and type. It could vary for at least 7 or 8 different types.
Okay, but have you all settled in terms of when you're going out now to acquire, have you settled on your specifications for these new buses and will consolidate? So you wouldn't go to Brazil and China and the US or wherever you find them the cheapest?
Yes, in terms of the acquisition, the specifications are there, and the acquisition will be one fleet type.
The last question before I give way. With respect to the HR, you have had a rapid turnover in staff, as well key staffs, key staff, head of HR, even in your position. I'm seeing you, and you just got there in 23, which is earlier this year. Although you were there from 21 to 22, I don't know, I can't remember in which capacity. What is causing that continuous turnover? This is a company that really needs to be settled to progress.
Well, from my assessment, the PTSC is a challenging environment, and that may account for some of the turnover. Also, to attract the high-level professionals, we have been encountering a lot of problems with regard to the salary and the attraction to the portfolio. So some persons come and they stay a little while and they leave. But recently we have consolidated the management team, and a lot of the managers you see here are serving in their second contract. I myself was the Deputy General Manager Operations, and I have assumed the position of the General Manager. So within recent time, that has changed.
One last thing. In terms of what is the position that is in charge of the fleet? That engineering position that used to be there, what's the new name of it?
Deputy General Manager Engineering.
We have that person?
That person is seated behind me here.
And that person, who, Mr.?
David Manga.
Yes. He's an engineer?
Yes.
And you've been you just came, how long have you been with PTSC?
So it's approximately 2 years and 6 months. This is my second contract.
All right, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member John. I want to turn over to Dr. Brown now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning once again to those appearing before the committee. And I want to start by congratulating the PTSC based on the feedback from the Auditor General's Department on its significantly improved responsiveness to the Auditor General. And I want to thank the Auditor General's Department for sharing that observation. Sometimes the Auditor General is viewed as the bad news department, but when there is progress, you know, it was a good start to our discussion. I want to have some comments from you on the new and expanding revenue streams for the PTSC. And I would like some feedback in terms of whether you are serious in terms of pursuing payments from tenants. How is that process going, including Citygate and the other hubs? Is there exploration of advertising in buses and other modalities for the future? And I'd like some comments on advertising along the bus route as well. Is that in place? Is that a source of revenue? Is that something that's being explored for the future? Chairman, I have quite a few questions, and I don't know if you, for the floor, you'd want me to give all and those responsible would reply, or should I pause, get a response?
I think for clarification, for clarity,
So
for
I'll
the listening
pause.
audience as well,
Okay.
you should do one at a time.
Okay.
Thank you, member, for your questions. There's a lot of questions there. I'll try to recall them. Right. In terms of collection from tenants, that has proven in the past to be an issue. But we have a very stringent approach to it at this point in time. We have written all tenants who have arrears. Everybody has been written. So we would have gone through that process. With some of the tenants, we would have entered into payment arrangement, promissory note arrangements. And those who agreed to that, that is ongoing, and we monitor that on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, sorry. In terms of those tenants who we are unable to come to some sort of arrangement, we have forwarded a number of those cases to the courts. So we are pursuing a legal pathway with those. In terms of other government departments, we have written to the heads of those departments. And for the best part, other government agencies have settled their accounts. There are a couple that are outstanding, and we continue to pursue those. Proceeding forward, we have a policy that is being enforced with regard to tenancy. So we monitor them on a daily basis, our accounts department. And where there are issues that arise, we deal with it within a month or two. We write and we go through a process with that. And if need be, we serve notices of eviction if we cannot collect on those, and they continue to be delinquent. So that is in terms of the tenancies. You may have to repeat the other question.
The question with respect to new revenue streams, advertising, what is the advertising philosophy within the buses, on the bus route, etc.? Just I'd like some feedback.
Yes,
on that,
if I may, before you go to that, just hold for 1 second. Can you advise what is the value of the outstanding rents thus far for these entities?
I will have to provide that in writing for you. I don't have the figure of that.
Thank you very much. Now on.
Yes, members. So thanks for your question. With regard to new revenue streams, there are several initiatives that we have embarked upon. As you would probably have noticed, we have an ongoing advertising of Bus It to the Beach, which has been a very successful project so far. So we're doing those extra charters and tours, Know Your Country tours, and so on. That's one area. With regard to advertising, for those of us who traverse the Beetham Highway when you come up to PTSC's main building, we have that big wall, which we refer to as the Great Wall, in which we have several advertising positions. So we advertise that way. We traditionally have done a lot of advertising on bus wrapping, and we continue to explore that area. However, during the COVID time, that particular type of advertising dwindled considerably. Hopefully, it will pick up again. We also have advertising on our fixtures within the pavilion, within the hub in Port of Spain, and we intend to increase that in our other transit malls, etc. With regard to other types of advertising, we're dealing right now with our marketing department, trying to explore new areas. We also generate additional revenues and charters for special events. So like things like the Commonwealth Games and the cricket and the World Cup and so on that comes along. So we have the CPL coming up. We have, I think, a tour of India sometime coming up, and Commonwealth Games and so on. We provide those types of services as well. And we're also doing a lot of work in consultation with the tourism ministry to increase those type of services.
Thank you. I have a supplemental based on what you just indicated and a comment you had made previously. You said you are currently servicing 79 out of 163 routes because of bus availability.
Yes.
But while I'm encouraging the need to generate more revenue, I actually think it's a commendable effort to try to generate more revenue outside of traditional sources. Is it that we are using the buses for purposes outside of transport and therefore denying the traveling public access to those buses by pursuing these other revenue-raising methods?
Mr. Chairman, we have some specially equipped buses for tours and charters that don't normally run the normal routes. So
thank you very much. I hand over back to Dr. Brown.
Few questions, and maybe I will break it up and give other members an opportunity. My attention was drawn when the PTSC was asked about its weaknesses. A phrase was used in response: negative culture. Let me just ask the question, and you would gauge how best to respond to it. Can you elaborate on what that refers to and the steps that are being taken to address negative culture?
Thank you, member, for that question. Maybe it is a misused phrase, negative culture, but it is what I call a legacy culture that was not based on customer, it was not customer centric. So what the PTSC is doing is refocusing itself on being a more customer centric organization. We have one of our strategic goals, as we said, a very ambitious 90% customer satisfaction. And all the activities that we are embarking upon is geared towards that perception, changing that perception of PTSC to a more customer-centric organization focused on its customers, its commuters, who are really the backbone of the organization. So that is
one in this block. I see extensive reference to this 163 routes. What exactly is that based on? Is that, what is the formula that has come up with 163 routes for the country? And is that something that has evolved with time, or is that we've closed our eyes and used that as static and we plan around that? And connected to that is the future disposition of the fleet with respect to electric buses, diesel, CNG. Can you give a sense as to what is the trajectory of the PTSC? Understanding there's procurement and train, etc. But from the corporation's point of view, what is the ideal future disposition? Let's say in 2030, what would your fleet look like? But I don't want you to forget that initial aspect of the 163 routes, how you came up with that. Is that static? And I would want some comments along those lines.
Thanks, member. The 163 routes that we talk about so often was in place around 2010, 11, 12, 13, around there. At which time we had a maximum level of fleet working on the road. And then the fleet, it started aging and deteriorating, and we had eventually ended up with, less than 200 run out. So we had to relook our routes. And we do have a policy in terms of how we determine routes and so on, even new routes, which we revise from time to time. So we had to look at which are the routes that would give us and give the public the best benefit. And that's how we came down to 75, to 79. We are moving, once we acquire more and the fleet is grown, we will be increasing the number of routes. And again, we will be looking at our studies that we revise every 2 to 3 years. We have a section within our company that look at that. And that's how we come up with the number of routes. 163 is the optimum that we had at one point in time, and they were all running. But now we don't. So.
And I'm not sure the response took me where I wanted to go. So, because when asked an earlier question, the response was that the newly acquired buses and the 90% formula was applied, etc., would service this listing of routes, this number of routes.
Yes.
So what determines a route for the PTSC? And if that was the listing back in 2010 or whatever previous period, was that based on science, or was that based on, we have X number of buses available? Is there some science involved here? And I would want a little insight into how the corporation treats with determination of a route.
Yes. So there is some science involved in it. So you would have a route, for example, from Port of Spain to Siparia or to Barrackport. However, if you don't have enough buses to service that route, you will have to incorporate the bus that is running that route that would normally you would have had several other in-between routes, right? So you'll have Port of Spain running to, let's say, Princestown, or Port of Spain running to, some intermediary spot. Now what we do is we run the entire route, which gives you added time, but you could transport less number of people on the entire route. And that's how we will address those matters.
Member, also yes, there is some science to how we establish a route. Sometimes you look at things like population density is something that you would look at. Sometimes we get requests from local government bodies to that there's a demand here. We would assess that demand and determine whether it is feasible. Of course, it is always easier when you have buses. Sometimes we are unable to satisfy. We also look at things like rural routes. So for example, the last 5 buses we bought were assigned to rural routes, Toko, Blanchisseuse. These are areas that do not have other forms of transportation in large volumes. And also, it is very expensive. So to come out of Blanchisseuse on a daily basis, maybe at $20 and so on. So the bus is very popular in that area in terms of its demand. So we use some of those metrics. Of course, road conditions are also important because you may want the bus to run on a particular route, but because of the size of the road, the bends, the buses cannot. So our smaller fleet is assigned to those types of routes. So as we acquire new buses, they will be assigned based on some of these metrics that we use.
So if I may, I just want to tie both this issue in to a previous issue. You indicated that we are doing 79 out of 163 routes as we speak. But you also indicated that you would have dropped from 163 to 79. Simultaneously with that drop, we have an assessment that you would have done, a survey that you would have done, which shows that while you have a drop in the amount of persons able to access public transport, you seem to have an increase in the customer rating. So is it that you're only measuring customer rating in terms of the number of people traveling? So you're measuring quality of service as opposed to the quality of service in terms of the vehicles, the actual use of the facility, as opposed to quality of service by PTSC itself as an institution servicing 163 routes or the transport demands of Trinidad and Tobago. The question, just to clarify, is whether or not this survey that was done is reflective only of the traveling public that you currently service as opposed to the demand for service. Because if you treat with the demand of service, we are looking at 163 routes based on your own assessment, which you had to reduce to 79. So is your survey for success, your benchmark, your KPI, is based on the actual persons traveling and their comfort, etc., or is it based on the demand for service and therefore satisfaction with PTSC?
Mr. Chairman, there is a mix of both. So we have two surveys. We have an internal survey that is done monthly by the PTSC, and that is done by our traveling public that use the PTSC service only, because we conduct those on our terminals and so on with our customers. And then we have the independent surveys that were done by PricewaterhouseCoopers that mix both, because in their reports to us, they will tell us what the traveling public that use the PTSC say, but they also have a component that speaks to what the general public thinks about the PTSC and whether or not they would use our service. So we have that component as well.
Thank you. Not at this point, because I know we are pressed for time as well, but I would like if you would be able to provide to us, to your committee, the differentiation. I would like to really see what the traveling public would have been saying as compared to what the general public would have been saying, if that's possible. Just for the reference, if you don't have it now, you could present it to the committee at a later point in time. How many beneficiaries are we talking about? How many people? I'm trying to gauge on an annual basis, given your trajectory for growth so far. So let's go from 2010 thereabouts. So in terms of the number of persons using the Public Service Transport Corporation for accessing transport from point A to point B. So I don't know if you would have that now. I suspect you wouldn't. So I don't want to be unfair. So if you could provide it to the committee at a later point in time, is that okay? Yeah. Thank you. I want to turn over now to Member C. Prasad, who is with us online, and she would engage you all in some further conversations and questions.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the risks identified by the PTSC is your litigation risk. And I would like to get some information on what is the level of litigation costs that the corporation incurs on an annual basis, and what are the common issues that lead to litigation involving the PTSC?
In terms of thank you, member, for your question. In terms of the total costs, we can provide that in writing for you. But there are common areas. The common areas would be industrial relations matters. So we would have a number of those before the courts. That is where you have people who may be challenging termination, etc. We have litigation as I spoke to previously, in terms of tenancies. Those are people who are tenants and have not paid, and the debt remains outstanding. So that is another area. And then another large area would be in public injury. So if somebody falls on a bus, slips on the platform, these are areas that we have some number of issues that have arisen in those areas. And a fourth area would be in OSH-related matters, where we are an environment that is a mechanical environment, and there are injuries at times in terms of accidents that may attract those sorts of litigation.
A follow-up question. Are your costs increasing in terms of litigation or decreasing?
Again, I will provide that in writing, but what I can say is that a lot of them are spanning multiple years, so that they range back to 5 years, they have not been completed and so on. So new matters in terms of public injury, I would not say that it is increasing or there is any significant increase in that area. In terms of IR matters, I would consider it to be relatively stable. In terms of the public injury, what we would do is what we have is a very robust OSH system in place internally, where we monitor and we try to be very proactive in that regard.
Okay. Chairman, I have another question that I just came to mind. One of the recommendations of the internal auditor with respect to your cash flows was the inclusion of finance costs in your statement of comprehensive income. And it's noted that it's not been included in the cash flows. And I was wondering, what is the reason for excluding your finance costs? And if you could give us an idea of the quantum of these costs.
Good morning, member. The question of non-inclusion of the finance costs was from the internal auditor in 2016.
Right.
And that was corrected in the sense that finance costs are included in the income statement. Yes, income and expenditure statement, and therefore would be part of the cash flow with the opening balances. Yes. So it is inadvertently included. That has always been the case, and it was corrected in terms of explanation over the years. Yes.
So it's been satisfactorily dealt with?
Yes.
So it's not an issue anymore?
No.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about your accounts receivable. I've noticed that you have been able to, well, according to the information I have, it's down to 17.7 million. And I was wondering, what's the current situation like at present, and what strategies you all have been using to reduce your accounts receivable?
Okay, well, I will have to give you the figure in writing.
Okay.
But we have instituted, as the GM had alluded to earlier, we have rigorously followed our policies to ensure that we reduce the likelihood of, or the delays in recovery of our funds. So it's a continuous monitoring, monthly writing, following up where necessary, having the agreements for payment of those in default, having legal deal with the issues where there are challenges in collecting, eviction, that sort of thing. But we have been rigorously, and that has come down significantly. There is the challenge of the very old ones where we still have some legal matters outstanding. But in terms of current, it is at quite an acceptable level.
And you don't have an idea what is the current state of affairs with respect to accounts receivable?
Well, I don't have the figures on me, but we could respond to that in writing.
Okay, great. Chairman, I will give way to other members, but I do have a couple of other questions.
Thank you very much, member. I want to turn over now to member Gopi Schoon. Member.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and good morning again, everyone. Two questions at this time. One on customer contact and communication, and the other on the bus replacement policy. So to go to the customer contact, now recognizing, of course, that you have an insufficient bus complement, and you did say to me that, as I can recollect, that every 2 or 3 years you review your routes, etc. Is the customer involved in that route review? In other words, yes, you would look at the servicing all communities, and of course there are restrictions, of course, but is the customer involved? Do you do a survey at that time to understand what the customer wishes to get? Are they involved in that review? And the second thing is, of course, there would be inefficiencies in any system where you have an aging complement of buses. How do you communicate with the customer? I know that there might by now, and I hope that there is an online service. Are you actually ensuring that you're communicating your late arrivals, etc., using your online service? And at times as well, if you can predict 1 week down that you would not be able to service a particular route because your fleet is not up to scratch for various reasons, maintenance, etc., do you communicate through the papers? My question is about customer contact and communication with regard to planning and with regard to different kinds of exigencies. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, member. In terms of the contact with the customers to determine routes, that is an ongoing process. So in our monthly survey with customers, we would take on board any issues. We also have a very open customer complaint system where customers can also reach out to us and we address the customer complaints on an ongoing basis. When we are looking at routes, there are a number of stakeholders that we would engage. And as I said, I have a number of local government bodies would have reached out and indicated their desires in their communities. So that is also taken into consideration as we service routes. So yes, the customer is involved in the process along the way. In terms of customer communication, when there are disruptions, we use our Facebook platform. In fact, our latest one would have been on Monday with the heavy rains. We would have been proactive in indicating there may have been disruptions. And when there are specific disruptions, we would communicate that way to the commuters. In terms of when we are not having services, for example, on public holidays, you would see the ads in the papers where we communicate to our customers and give them information accordingly. So yes, when there are major route disruptions, that is communicated to our customers. Where the roads become impassable temporarily, we communicate that. And when the service is restarted, we would communicate that to our customers. As we go forward and we improve our IT platform, that will become more real time as we go forward.
Thank you. But staying on that, do you have a hotline? Because I would imagine that there are some days when you have a tire and some tire bus and all kind of things. So there are many things that will come up as to why a bus will not get to where it's supposed to be on time. Can that school child or that customer use the hotline to call you to find out what's happening?
We do have a hotline. But we also have at all our depots customer service reps and information booths on the Port of Spain depot where anyone can lodge an inquiry and the information can be provided to them accordingly.
Are there customer service? Sorry.
If I may, I just want to target you as you raise the issue. Can you confirm that mechanism that you just described is actually working at today's date?
That's what I wanted to find out.
Which mechanism?
Hotline.
The hotline that you just described.
Okay. I will have to check whether it's working at this date, but yes, that is in place. Our customer service reps are in place. We have the system where you can contact us, and where there are deficiencies, that can also be brought to our attention with regard to customer complaints. In terms of the customer complaints, that will be routed through our marketing department, where issues are normally raised through that department and are brought to our attention. So inquiries also come through that area.
Thank you. Going back to member.
Yes, but I want to come back to the hotline. I want to know, what is the hotline? How many people do you have servicing the hotline? I want you to tell us and come back to us on whether or not that is in use.
Right, will do, member.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I want to go back to the concern with regard to the limited buses. I know that you said you had 79 buses. Somewhere along the lines, I would have read that you have a bus replacement policy where you cited that the average fleet age should be in the range of 5 to 6 years. So I want to understand what's the average fleet age now, and understanding as well that we're going to 300 buses, some of which will be electric or all maybe electric. I'm not sure you said, but you're doing it in phases. Putting the two together, that is your fleet age and the arrival of the buses in phases. When do you see an improvement in the numbers that are available? Because there are 79 on now, but they may all quite be aged, and you may have 80 buses coming in the first phase. I don't know. So I really can't, what I'm pointing to is, when do we see the numbers actually increasing, both with your old and your new complement? I don't know if I explained it properly. Yeah.
In terms of the current fleet, we have a rigorous maintenance program to keep that fleet going. Based on our projection, we anticipate that we may, all things being equal, we are looking at probably an injection in the fleet probably in the second to the third quarter of 2024. Right, that will be the first probably injection of a new fleet, based on all things being equal in our procurement process and all things running smoothly. That would be when we would be looking at an improvement in our bus fleet. But until such time, we continue to aggressively look at the existing fleet to keep it running. We also have a bus refurbishment program going on, so there are some that are in longer term repairs. We are acquiring parts to bring those back into service and put them back into the fleet once they have been assessed as reasonable in terms of the expenditure on bringing it back. And those that have been assessed not to be beyond economic repair, those have been identified for disposal.
But I want to go back to the direct question as to the average fleet age, and to be even more specific, the average chassis age, because you said in your policy that you will not use any buses with a chassis older than 15 years, and because I'm also looking at the risk aspect of it as well. Tell me what's the average age, and so that gives us a sense that when your first phase of new buses come in, then what are we looking like? When would we see an improvement of the figures of buses available for public use? But go back to my pointed question of the average fleet age.
Right. In terms of that question, I'll hand that over to my engineering officer to address.
Good morning, member. I would take the opportunity to firstly start that we have from 2022 buses, a small number. We have buses 2018 and 2020. This is a newer fleet composing about 65 buses. After that, we have buses that are 12 years and greater, some even at 16 years, 18 years, along that line. So if you were to take an average, we could be over 10 to 12 years age. Your second part of your question that you asked about the present fleet and the policy that we have for bus replacement. Yes, there is an ongoing process that we identify buses that are not economical to repair as they get older. The supply of parts becomes very difficult to get. And so we use different strategies to identify these buses and for replacement. So the injection of the new buses that will start from, hopefully from next year, we should be able to strike a balance then to get the older fleet back up. And also the ones that will be approved for disposal will now be removed from the fleet, the core. So, so as we go along, we should see an improvement coming into next year with the injection of the new buses.
Okay, thank you very much for that. But can I, Chairman, may I just ask about the maintenance? What are the numbers in terms of your maintenance staff? And do you have trainees? A big focus must be trainees because these are specialized vehicles. And I would like to think that you do have a number of trainees who are going to grow into the job and who are going to stay with you. Thank you. Maintenance and trainees, etc.
Yes, so I will first start with maintenance. Over the past few years, we have implemented a maintenance program called Maximo that has been utilized across the engineering department at all depots. All jobs are created via a work order. We input all the parts costs, the labor costs, and all of that. So we now tracking the maintenance activity that is going on in the buses. Further to that, we now implemented and have the preventative maintenance is being scheduled via the new system. And it is flagged every month for buses that would reach the due date. So from a maintenance point of view, we do have a more aggressive system in place. We do also set minimum, maximum reorder levels for the stores so that procurement will be able to adjust the parts and supply. So so we have made significant improvement in those, especially for the older fleet. Secondly, we did have over the years with the older fleet, we would have trainees coming into PTSC. We had some NESC trainees. We also had some UE graduates working within the department. And now with the introduction and hopefully with the electric buses, we have already engaged local training bodies like UTT to formulate a program that will run in conjunction with PTSC to provide trainees for us to train up for when the new fleet come in. Also incorporated into that, the buses will have, the new buses will have a program that will involve in-house training by the manufacturer and also training that will be done at their location.
Good. Well, I mean, that sounds quite good. I mean, I'm pleased to know that the youth are involved and that there's a training program for them as you seek to have upskilled maintenance crews available at all times. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Chairman, I'll hand over. I have another question. I'll hand over to my colleagues.
Thank you. I want to engage the second round now. I think Member Monroe has just stepped out, so I'll engage Ms. John.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. I saw that 60%, the 60% and over group account for 13% of your ridership. This money you're reimbursed to the Ministry of Social Development. From the Ministry of right, is social development.
Social development, yes.
Do you get this money back on time?
Yes.
This is very good. All right. What about
at this point in time?
At this, well, no, I mean on time is good. Once you get it back on time. In terms of your rural transport services, I know at one time there was a specific dedicated rural transport service. How are you doing with that and your Tobago service, particularly from the rural end? I'm from Charlottesville. And basically, without public transport, PTSC, I would not have gone to school. So that is why I'm so fond of you all. So basically, what is happening with transportation in the Tobago end, and particularly in the rural areas that are so dependent, whether Trinidad or Tobago, on your services?
Well, thank you, member. Let me start with Tobago. In terms of at this present time, we would have had some challenges maybe late last year on the route, primarily because of the road conditions at Belgarden. That has since been restarted, and I can assure you that Lansformy and Charlottesville, those services are running very consistently, and we have been having very good responses to it. We also had a contingency in place should we not be able to run the routes with our buses, that we would have independent contractors on that route. But at this point in time, we have not had to invoke that. The buses are running there at this point in time.
And the school bus services, you still have that? Like the Roxborough Sec and...
Well, we have the maxi taxi services, the concessionaires that service the schools. So that process is also running, both in Trinidad and in Tobago.
So you have no buses, PTSC buses now running those routes as prior in terms of the secondary schools, only the contracted?
No, we don't. We have the contracted maxis taking up that issue.
Okay, one last question. With respect to your repair services and the spare part, you said you have a system in place, but is that like a just in time? You really have parts there on time for buses?
We have an inventory of parts that we have in stock that are utilized. We have reorder levels that we would set.
But you satisfy those reorder levels on time to get that run out consistent?
One of the disadvantages we have had from what I call the COVID years is that the supply chain has proven to be extremely difficult over the last 3 years. And although we are outside of COVID now, we continue to experience challenges in terms of the lead time to get parts. But the system is triggered and we order. We have a number of agents for the bus manufacturers in Trinidad, and we work with them closely in order to get the parts in on time as best as possible.
So that doesn't affect your ability in terms of down in that, what you call it, the warehouse, the ability to get the buses out. You don't think that...
Yeah, it does have an impact. If we do not get the parts in on time, and if we have a lead time stating that it's 16 weeks or 14 weeks and it doesn't come in that time, yes, it will affect the bus run-up.
But do you all use any local, outside of the maintenance area in the back there, do you all use any local contractors in terms of repairs and so on?
Yeah, we use them for muffler repairs, we use them for some engine repairs and so on.
Yeah. So then my last question will have to do with the procurement, the new procurement legislation. I saw it here where it's become a challenge, because you have a lot of repair and demands that will come up just unexpectedly. How is that impacting you? Are you registered? And
yeah, we are actually quite advanced in the process. I would say we have been working with the OPR. We have our handbook and guidelines in place. Those have been approved by the OPR. We continue to work with them because we had a lot of preparatory work, but when we finally implemented the system, you would have seen some teething problems, and we engage with them when we encounter those problems. But generally, it has not affected us in any significant way. We also would have put out advertisements in the papers for our suppliers and so on to register, because we can only use registered suppliers from the depository. So I would rate that as pretty advanced, and we have seen no significant fallout from the public procurement.
Because just last comment, because I really saw you flagged it here in your strategic plan 2021, and you talked about proprietary work. You have gone to the procurement administrator and explained that you have work that is specific to the PTSC.
Yes.
So you'll not be inadvertently held up.
Yes. And it provides for that. The Act provides for those instances.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Before I turn over to Member Brown again, just to follow up on a question that you raised, and that was raised, something similar was raised before, but from the opposite side. We have spoken quite a bit about the amount of money is being owed to PTSC. I am very curious, based on your trading and so on, about the amount of money owed by PTSC to various suppliers and institutions, the length of time that those debts have been incurred before repayment, etc. Can you provide any kind of assistance to that?
Well, my finance officer may be able to provide specifics, but as a general manager, I would indicate that I have not had any significant claims coming across my desk. I've had some age ones coming from 2011, 2010, but in terms of our payment to our suppliers and so on, we are pretty much up to scratch on those. And we maintain our payment timelines. But my finance officer could probably shed some more light.
Okay, so that is correct. We have cleared up all those old issues that existed with outstanding payments, and we are more or less up to date and on time with our payments. We currently it's only about 588,000, and that would include, that would be because we would have registered in the system those activities that you would have down payments on and not yet completed to make final payments. Some of them are PSIP payments. Yeah, so we are good, in good standing.
Thank you very much. I turn over to Member Brown again.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I appreciate the interaction that we've been having or we've had this morning. Like Member John, many of us would have grown up depending on the PTSC service and understand how vital it is. To this day, many persons' lives revolve around the movement of a bus, access to a bus, school, work, going to the beach, as you yourself have said. But there's another part of the population who may not really appreciate the vital importance of having this public transport service available. And for them, the main calamity would be if a bus breaks down on the road, it causes traffic, etc., etc. I was very pleased to see that you had or have 2 recovery utility vehicles, which from the documentation are equipped or were equipped, I'm using the tense guardedly, to respond if there's a breakdown and to be able to get that bus serviceable and moving as quickly as possible for the benefit of the passengers as well as the other users of the road. Can you give an update on that, those assets, the recovery utility vehicles? Are they in play at this time? Is that an asset that you would like to expand and acquire more? What is the status of that service?
Currently, we do not have any recovery vehicles that are serviceable on the fleet. We have some for disposal, but we have service arrangements with third-party providers to recover buses. And we also have a response mechanism when a bus breaks down. So for example, I will use one. We had one yesterday, and the bus to Sandy Grande broke down in Sanwo. We dispatched one of the buses that was passing going to Arima, picked up the passengers, and we arranged for a bus from Sandy Grande to meet those passengers. It was fueling in Arima and environs, and they took them the second leg. And then we dispatched another bus. So we would normally, when there's a shutdown, dispatch an alternate vehicle where possible. And to recover, engineering would go on site. They would either be able to troubleshoot the bus there, and if it cannot be troubleshooted and started at that point, we would engage our service providers at that point to bring the buses back into the depot.
Well, I stumbled onto something I didn't expect to, because these recovery utility vehicles were not that old. What happened to them? Is it a case of, ironically, poor maintenance? what became of those vehicles? And is it that the PTSC has made a determination that there's a better business case to utilize these third parties for a rapid response when there's a breakdown, as opposed to having a team with vehicles that would respond from within the corporation?
I would say that, well, those vehicles would have served their life, so that is what has been assessed. But in terms of the future, do we have a requirement for recovery vehicles? Yes, we do. And there is discussion to acquire recovery vehicles organic to the PTSC. But at times, one vehicle may not be enough. You may have three breakdown, so that having that hybrid of third-party providers is also acceptable to us. It is about building a resilience within the system and a redundancy to be able to provide the best customers. When there is a shutdown, the first thing you want to do is get the commuters off the road, and then you want to recover the vehicle back into the depot as fast as possible.
All right, and finally, can the general manager indicate when those two recovery vehicles were purchased and when they came out of service? Can the committee be informed of that, please?
Yes, member, I will inform in writing.
Back to Member John.
You're coming to the end. But CEO, Chairman, CEO, you would have spoken about the disposal of old buses, a significant number of these buses. And I mean, I congratulate you on getting from end to end. At least you have gotten to the board who has approved. But in terms of actually getting rid of these old buses, that was the hardest thing I know of PTSC, because the process is so long-winded and involved, and maybe part of your act, I'm not sure, or the tender process. How have you gone to the end of it? What are you going to do now in terms of getting them off your hands, off the compound? What do you do?
All right, so we have the 187 that has already been approved by the board. We have 31 that has been decommissioned and deregistered by licensing because they are part of the process. So those 31 will go forward to auction off in accordance with the Disposal Act, the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. Once we have that first set, we will again identify chassis numbers because that is a part of it, and licensing will decommission and deregister. So we'll go through that process over the next couple of months to have those vehicles properly disposed of and accounted for within the government system.
And off your compound?
Well, we have a number of them stationed in our Tanti compound, which is off the compound. As that compound, as we dispose from that compound, those that you may see around maybe the Port of Spain depot will move to that disposal compound.
Just follow your rules very carefully, especially the equipment coming into it. You don't only have your own laws, your own rules and regulations, but
I will, ma'am.
Right, please. Yeah, so, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions I would like to raise at this point in time as well. In your submissions, PTSC, this is the PTSC, in your submissions to the committee, you indicated that the PTSC used management accounting to make short-term decisions and develop strategies for long-term growth. These include monitoring and managing overtime. Can you advise what is PTSC's annual spend on overtime between the period 2014 to as recent as you could pass on?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have the spend on overtime from 2014, but I can give you from 2018.
What we were trying to do the comparison, but I'll take 2018 and then.
All right. So in 2018, it was approximately 6 million. In 2019, following some stringent internal adjustment, it would have gone down to 3.7 million. In 2020 and 2021, 2020, it was 1.9 million. And in 2021, 1.8, I would say 1.9 million. Now, those 2 years would have also been affected by the fact that they were COVID years, so they would have been impacted by that. In 2022, it was 2.4 million. That was where we were coming out of COVID. So over the years, we have trended more or less down in terms of overtime. And we have a stringent internal process in place now where all overtime has to be approved by the general manager in advance. So I will ask the questions of why is the overtime to be incurred and what am I getting out of it in terms of what is the deliverable. So that is more or less centralized, and my deputy general managers are tasked to control that overtime and to account to the finance and account committee every month with regard to overtime spend. So that is how we control that overtime spend.
Thank you. Further questions. In the last committee's report, the committee had recommended the rationalization, reorientation, and restructuring of PTSC to enhance customer service, etc. In your submission to the committee here, based on our query, dated May 15, 2023, you indicated, and I want to quote just for the purpose of asking the question, PTSC, through a tender process, engaged consultant services for the organizational transformation of PTSC. The final report of the consultant, which includes recommendations for the restructuring of PTSC, has been submitted to the Ministry of Works and Transport for its review and recommendation to Cabinet for approval. The questions, sir, is what was the cost of engaging the consultant and who was this consultant?
Thank you, Chairman, for the question. The cost was $700,000. The consultant was EY, and it was done through an open tendering system, a RFP.
Can you advise when the consultant's report was actually submitted from you to the Ministry of Works and Transport?
In December 2022.
Question to the Ministry of Works and Transport then, have you all been able to review the proposals, the submissions by the consultant?
Thank you, Chair. The document did come to the ministry. We did have an initial review. We requested a presentation from the consultant, which occurred, I think, was approximately 2 months ago, a month ago. Subsequent to that, we also asked that a review be made in conjunction with the proposed transition program that must come into place with the addition of the new buses, and that is to be submitted to the ministry.
So you at this point would not be able to advise if there's a progression from, well, when we will move from Ministry of Works and Transport to actual Cabinet for review and then revision?
At this time.
Can I ask if you would have consulted at all or raised this may be for both PTSC and Ministry of Works, whether you would have raised the issues contained in the submission with any relevant trade unions, etc., or is this too early for that purpose? Do you have to wait until you go to Cabinet and then make policy decision and guidance?
It is too early for that. We have not, in the ministry itself, consolidated the final document. So we are awaiting the resubmission, and it's when we come to some measure of agreement then.
Do you have any idea of a timeline for when that can happen? When we can see this transformation of PTSC based on the report that was submitted?
Thank you. So I believe PTSC is to return to the ministry within 1 month's time, and based on that, we will then take it from there.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions. The Auditor General issued an adverse opinion on each of the PTSC's financial statements for the period 2014 to 2018, and basically said, and I quote, the financial statements do not present fairly the financial position of PTSC as at September 30th, now of the year in question. So that would be 2014 to 2018. My question is, either PTSC or the Auditor General could provide a little bit of clarification for me, please, as to exactly what does that mean? What does it mean that it does not fairly present the financial position of PTSC? And further to that, when you give an adverse opinion, what then follows from that?
Okay, we follow ISA International Standards of Accounting 705, which details modification modified audit opinions. So the definition of an adverse opinion is the auditor shall express an adverse opinion when the auditor, having obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence, concludes that misstatements individually or in the aggregate are both material and pervasive to the financial statements. So in this case, we would have detail on the face of the audit report, the misstated items on the financial statement.
So you would have actually raised those issues with PTSC?
Yes, we would have. At the end of the audit, we have what is called within the audit world exit meeting, where the unresolved matters are discussed or brought to the attention of the finance people.
Right, so that's fair. My question then is whether PTSC would have taken any actions to treat with the issues that would have led to such an adverse report prior to submission or subsequent from submission from 2018, being the last year, I think, that you would have reviewed to date that we've been examining. So my question is whether PTSC has engaged in any actions to treat with some of the issues that you'd have raised in this adverse report, and whether actions have been taken to ensure that we no longer have a recurrence of such an activity.
Okay, so yes, we have taken most of the concerns raised into account. We have two main ones that are still outstanding that we are treating within this financial year. One is the valuation of the property and plant. We have engaged the Valuations Division, Ministry of Finance, to assist in this effort. The other one is the treatment of brought forward government grants from 2017, which we are currently working to resolve in this financial year.
Thank you. I'm glad you raised that specific issue, because in your submission, you also indicated that the major challenge encountered each year is the valuation of assets as the property and plant, and that the last valuation was done in 1973. Now, that's a very, very, very long time ago. And therefore, we would have been carrying these figures on our books, which are not truly reflective of reality. My question then, because PTSC has been around for quite a while, is why has there not been an evaluation from as far back as 73 to now, 1973 to now? That's quite a lot of time. That's half a decade. 1973, yes. Oh, okay, so maybe it's not half a century, but it's like, yeah, I'm going to 20. All right, sorry. My apologies. It's half a decade, half a century, sorry.
The challenges we would have had with regard to this is the cost of the valuations. All right, so the value of land and buildings is in the millions of dollars, which PTSC does not have. Since the Auditor General has raised it over the past few years, we have been trying to engage Ministry of Finance Valuation Division. They have sent a list of requirements that we are trying to work on and to provide to them. So hopefully that should be starting soon.
All right, just some basic housekeeping as well. PTSC, there's two different estimates. In your audited financial statements, you advise that you had 5 transit malls, and your website indicates that the corporation actually has 3. Can you clear up which it is?
All right, for clarification, we would refer to the transit malls as 3. They are Sanwa, Curep, and Tunapuna as the transit malls. We would differentiate those from the depots, which are Port of Spain, Arima, Sandy Grande, Chaguanas, San Fernando, Point Fortin, and Tobago. The depots are where we have buses domiciled, and the trips would normally start at those locations. Transit malls, the one in Curep, Sanwa, are where buses will just stop and drop off persons and proceed on. So the correct amount is 3.
Yeah, so it's just there's a different function and therefore different terminology used to ascribe to each of the entities. Another bit of house cleaning. In some of your correspondence to us, you referenced development plan 2017 to 2022. In other communication, we have seen a PTSC strategic plan 2018 to 2020. Again, it's either one or the other. So which is it?
Well, we have the strategic plan, which is the overarching plan that we have with two main objectives of 90% customer satisfaction and 30% internally generated revenue. Now, out of that strategic plan would fall a number of activities, specific developmental activities that are to be undertaken. And that is where the development plan comes in. So the development plan, I would say, is a subset of the strategic plan, and is really the action plan going forward to bring the fruition of your goals in your strategic plan.
Excellent. Based on your strategic plan, then, you had a situation where 21% of the strategic activities that were actually implemented fully, 54% were at various stages of implementation, and 25% not implemented at all. Can you advise now that related to specific types of activities, operational efficiency, employee satisfaction, engagement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What I'm trying to get from you, sir, is this 25%. What is that 25% that was not implemented and why?
Thank you, Chairman, for your question again. The 25%, one of the pillars of the strategic plan is the fleet modernization. So the acquisition of the buses is a key activity that has not as yet taken place. It is ongoing, but it hasn't reached at the level that we anticipated at that point.
So wouldn't that be in the various phases of implementation? So that's the other part, and just the 25% not yet implemented?
Well, when we look at the strategic plan, that would have been part that would not have been implemented. And those have a number of other follow-on things from it. We also have some infrastructural development that has to take place. Again, that has issues with regard to Commissioner of State Lands that we are working through to get those accelerated.
Thank you. Question to the, this feels like Parliament. Question to the Ministry of Works and Transport. The Ministry of Works and Transport explained in your submissions to us, to the committee, that the National Performance Framework established key indicators for the bus transport sector under the area theme, improving productivity through quality infrastructure and transport. This NPF, this National Performance Framework, covered the period 2017 to 2020. However, to date, as far as the information we have in front of us, there has been no new framework developed after 2020. Madam Pierce, can you advise why no such updated framework was put in place?
So, Chairman, of course, the challenge would be that the framework is not developed by the Ministry of Works and Transport. This is an overall national strategic framework undertaken by the Ministry of Planning and Development. However, I can say that what has been in train is the revised National Development Strategy, which is the 2016 to 2030 development, 2030 document that has been developed by the Ministry of Planning and Development, as well as in the interim, there was the Road to Recovery document, which was developed, which also spoke to the question of national transportation.
All right, so this may be my last question for now anyway, unless my colleagues have others that I could piggyback off to. In your what we have found is the Constitution provides that the statutory authorities should submit to the President before 1st of July in every year a report of the exercise of its functions, etc. And it describes the procedures to be followed, and the President shall cause the report to be laid within 60 days thereafter in each house. The question, when raised, the Ministry explained, that is, the Ministry of Works and Transport would have explained that the quarterly financial statements are not submitted to the Ministry of Works and Transport, but rather to the Investment Division of the Ministry of Finance. My question, ma'am, is that the Ministry of Works and Transport share oversight of the PTSC with the Investments Division of the Ministry of Finance. Is it a shared responsibility, or is it that the PTSC now responds directly to the Ministry of Finance?
It is a shared responsibility because the Ministry of Finance as corporation so would have certain requirements and they would have certain oversight over the entities. And the Ministry of Works and Transport in the same vein would have certain oversight over the entities. So it is a shared responsibility.
Thank you. I have no further questions that I could see at this point. I want to find out from my colleagues at the committee level if you have any additional questions and if we have any further questions on the ministry. Leslie Prasad, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have two quick questions. One concerns the route evaluation policy, because I was listening to comments and questions about the efficient provision of services. And I'm wondering, what is the PTSC policy on your route evaluations, and what is the status of the acquisition of the technology required to implement more efficient route evaluation policies?
Thank you, member, for your question. In terms of the technology for route evaluation exercises, that is part of the tender. That the tender has a heavy IT support system called an intelligent public transportation system. And that will allow us to have the data more accurately recorded in terms of ridership, in terms of a number of issues that will then feed into route evaluations. So that is part of the tender process as we speak.
And could you just remind me what is the timeline for acquiring the technology?
Well, the tender process is ongoing at this point in time. It will close probably in about a month. After that, there's evaluation and of course implementation. We are looking at the second quarter to the third quarter of 2024 for introduction of that technology.
Okay, and a last observation, following Minister Gopi Skoon's questions, have you ever considered an app, installing and having a PTSC app where you could pay for your transport, and you could have, messages blasted out to your customers, with service disruptions, new routes, etc.?
Well, in terms of the app, yes, that is part of the plan, and it is also part of that IPTS system. That is one component of it. In terms of paying for services, over the last year, we have the payment portal that has been implemented on the PTSC website. So that allows even commuters going to our buses to the beach charters, they can pay. A year ago, they had to come into PTSC with a receipt or go into a bank and so on. They are now paying online for those services.
But the new way is everything's on your phone. So that, apps are really the way to go. And maybe... Yes,
member, and the PTS system has all that embedded in it. So that is where we are going.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you for your participation today. I'm really quite impressed with the strides you're making.
Thank you, member. Turn over to Member John again, please.
Yes, Chairman. I should have had a follow-up question after I had noted the 13% of your 60 and over age group constitute 13% of the population you carry. And then there was the school children in uniform. They are non-paying passengers. But you didn't seem to be able to pick up what was the percentage, so then you would know what was the revenue lost, or is it that you are paid by the government for this too?
Well, we do track the school children in uniform. Finance will indicate whether we are paid for that service.
Okay.
Are you paid? You recover this income the same way you recover from social development?
We are supposed to. We are having a challenge with the school children in collecting for the school children in uniform, and that is engaging the attention of the general manager and the PS of Ministry of Education at this time.
But they make an allocation for that in the budget, in the national budget?
Yeah, we have that in
not you, but the government, you know.
Yes, the government, it's part of a cabinet minute for the payment. It's the same minute that speaks to Ministry of Social Development, paying us a certain amount of money for people elderly, 60 and over. It's the same minute that speaks to us being compensated from Ministry of Education for transporting school children in uniform.
But you also had some small buses, independent providers who will transport school children. You still manage that service?
It's managed through the school maxi taxi service, which is paid for by the Ministry of Education. And yes, we do get payment for that.
On time, because I know at times there's a lag, a major lag, and they complain, you see it in the newspapers.
Yeah, we have had some challenges in the past. Recently, we have done some tweaking internally, and we communicate extensively with the Ministry of Education. So over the last couple of months, the payments have been pretty regular, and we have also worked on the school maxi concessionaires to submit their claims on time. Previously, we would probably hold back a group for a small number. We have a deadline, and if that deadline passes, you are now going to a group for late payment, and we go with the ones who have submitted on time.
That's good. But in terms of your interaction with these independent providers, you have training and oversight and so on to ensure that children are safe when they're in their care?
We have training and oversight. We also have a policy that guides the maxi taxi concessionaires. And we also have in their contract, the do's and don'ts. And if there are infringements on that, they are removed from the service.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. One of the things we cannot take for granted is security. And I recognize the corporation expends significantly on security. My question is, and I also observed that there are cameras in the hubs, etc. Do you have cameras on the vehicles themselves to allow for monitoring and viewing of what transpires, basically a security camera within buses? If so, to what extent does this apply? And then do your security officers ever travel maybe anonymously on buses? Is there some sort, about the Air Marshals program that operates with airlines? Is there anything parallel with the buses, or do we generally simply assume that the clientele would be safe on the bus?
Well, let me start from the big picture. We do have CCTV coverage in all 7 depots. So from my office, I am able to see what is going on in San Fernando, in Tobago, and so on. We continue to expand that network in terms of the transit malls. That is the next phase, so that we can see what is going on in transit malls. So generally, our compounds are heavily surveilled by those. We have also implemented our surveillance room, which is covered 24/7. So the assets of the corporation are covered in that. In terms of the newer buses, there is the capability, but we have not been leveraging that. And that is one of the areas we plan to leverage. The new buses will come, and part of the specifications is for it to come with cameras. And that surveillance room will expand into an operations room, which will be monitoring those buses on a real-time basis. Apart from that, our drivers have a SOP if there are issues on a bus with regard to unruly passengers, threats, and so on, and they have a standard operating procedure with respect to stopping by a nearest policeman, going into a police station and requesting the unruly passenger to be removed, if necessary, from the bus. We treat that very seriously at the corporation. Yeah.
Another last final question. With regards to fraud, I noticed that in response to our question, the PTSC advised that they have mechanisms in place to treat with issues of fraud. But in your submission under the issue internal audit, your page 17 of that submission, you also acknowledge that the internal auditor's assessment is that the internal controls were assessed to be weak during the financial years 2014 to 2018. So I'm just looking at the match that you have internal structures that you believe will treat with fraud, but you admit that those internal structures are weak. Is it that you don't think it's advisable to have a specific fraud policy, or is it that since 2018 to now changes have been made, maybe a development of a fraud policy, but some level of improvement so that we no longer have an assessment of internal controls being weak?
Chairman, it would be the latter. Since 2018 to now, there has been significant strengthening of our internal controls. We have on the roster 78 policies that are currently up to date or being reviewed for update. So those 78 policies are what guides us. One of those policies is the Code of Conduct, which has issues with regard to fraud. So we use our policies to guide the behavior of employees internally. We also have our internal disciplinary system, which deals with issues of fraud. And we have taken action where those very few instances that it has occurred, we have taken action against employees. Some of those are litigation matters that may be there. We are in the process of having an overarching fraud policy that should come on stream within the next 3 to 4 months, given our process of how it runs. It goes through a number of committees that would review it, and then it would be implemented. So that is where we are with regard to it. But adherence to our policies would identify different areas. So finance has a number of policies that guides their areas, marketing, operations, and where they are deficient, where they are found to be transgressions, it is forwarded to our investigations department, who does an internal investigation, and if necessary, it goes to HR for disciplinary action accordingly.
Thank you. That's very welcome news. I believe that Member Gopi Schoon has a couple of questions she wants to raise with you. Member Schoon?
Thank you very much. Just curious about something. I would imagine that there are passengers who use the services of the PTSC 100%. So those would include persons heading to the airport or to the ferry station, or someone, or a micro business person. And so confirm to me that you do have routes that would eventually get you. It might be via a hub, but to the Piarco Airport and to the Scarborough Airport, and also to the ferry station in Port of Spain. And whether or not there's a luggage policy, because I'm sure that there are issues with regard to micro businesses, persons wanted to come on with more than just a small bag. Is there so in addition to do we do those routes, do we have a luggage policy? And with regard to the new buses, is it that they would come with boots that would be able to accommodate pieces of luggage and so on? Just curious. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Member. Yes, we do have routes in Tobago. We have the Crown Point service, which services the airport, runs from Scarborough to Crown Point. We have the Piarco service. That is a fairly reliable service that goes to the airport daily. And we have recently started to run it on Saturdays to allow persons to use the bus to go to the airport. In terms of the ferry, we have specific ferry services that on the morning when persons use the ferry, we call it the ferry. If you look down at the ferry mall there, you would see that the ferry terminal, you would see buses line up there in the morning to take workers from the ferry into Port of Spain, right? So we do have those services. In terms of luggage, we are not very strict on the luggage. Once the luggage can fit under your seat, the new buses will have luggage compartments and overhead luggage areas so that they can carry the luggage.
Good. Very pleased about that, but I think you need to have a policy though, because I would imagine as you have these new vehicles coming and so on, and customers understanding that they now can use the boot facilities and the luggage and the compartments ahead. I'd like to think that you should have a luggage policy so that you don't have abuse by any one person or so. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the recommendation, member.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's it for me, Chairman.
Thank you. If there are no further questions from my colleagues on the committee, then it falls upon me to thank you all very much, representatives of the various agencies that are here today, and thank you for your forthright answers in providing information both to the committee and to the members of the public. I want to declare my interest, even though belatedly so, that like my colleagues here, I have also made extensive use during my youth, which was a while ago, of PTSC for both transport to University of the West Indies and transport to my first set of employment in Port of Spain. And therefore, I'm very grateful for every step forward that PTSC makes. And as a result of that, I'm also very concerned when those steps are not as quickly made as possible, because I see that PTSC has a phenomenal space and a phenomenal role, especially given the traffic situations we have in Trinidad and Tobago. I think a more efficient public transport service will, in fact, not just a more efficient, but an expanded public service transport function will, in fact, do a lot to ease the traffic congestion coming in and out of Port of Spain and in and out of almost every city, town, or village in Trinidad and Tobago. So I thank you all very much. Members of the Ministry of Works and Transport, PTSC, and the Auditor General's Department. I thank you all very much for your support here today. I also want to thank members of the listening and viewing audience for tuning in. And we look forward to you all joining us again at some future point in time. Thank you all very much. We move forward from here. Thank you.